There is the case where he discerns the intellect, discerns mental object, he discerns the fetter that arises, he discerns the arising of an unarisen fetter, he discerns the abandoning of fetter once it has arisen, and he discerns that no further arising of fetter once it has been abandoned. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So this is a saying, or this is part of a discourse that we take to discuss in this particular session of mindfulness practice. The discourse we taken and being discussing for some time is the 4 foundations of mindfulness discourse. In the 4 foundations of mindfulness discourse, the Blessed One is providing the framework for mindfulness, right? So the basic handbook of mindfulness. So when I say the basic handbook of mindfulness, one may feel that, okay, I have the handbook all done and dusted. It is not in this case. In the case of other handbooks, yes, if you have the handbook, you can assemble and disassemble, no problem. But in this handbook, it's just a framework, right? And it is something that nobody else has done except for someone who has been practicing for some time. So therefore, you need to have the handbook, and to understand the handbook, there should have a noble friend, right? Someone who is able to help you what is happening in the practice, right? So to give a brief summary of, for the benefit of those who are joining today and who recently, in that 4 foundations of mindfulness, the most important thing is the Blessed One says, it is the one and only way to purify beings and to achieve the final liberation, right? And there are 3 other factors that he's showing. And what is this one and only way? It's giving 4 reference points where we can be mindful. The first reference point is the body. And the second reference point is the feeling. Third one is the mind, right? And then he's giving another reference point, which we call Dhamma, which we call phenomena, which in general we can call as the nature. And in that, is giving these 3 reference points once again at a subtle layer. It's a body, feelings, and the mind, but not at a gross layer, but at a subtle layer. So once you have gone through the body that you can see, and the feelings arising from that, and the mental activations and agitations that you can see when you practice, once you go through them, there is another subtle layer of it. And that subtle layer is categorized under phenomena or under Dhamma, and he's discussing that, right? So the few sentences I took today is from that section, from the last section. How you can be mindful of Dhamma, or how you can be mindful of phenomena. And under phenomena, there are few sections. And the first section is the section that blocks our practice. There are certain factors that doesn't allow us to continue our practice. And the beauty of that is the Blessed One is saying, once you go through this body, feeling, and the mind, these disturbances, which we call hindrances, are not complete, are not something that you will have to completely eradicate. It's nature. That is how the humanity works. That is how we have not been involved in realizing or finding liberation, because these hindrances have been active. So when you try to find it, you will see these hindrances. Seeing the hindrances is the nature, right? And that we have discussed in detail in previous sessions. And then he says, you will see this physical mental process at a subtle layer, which we discussed before this section, which is called clinging aggregates. Yes, included 5 clinging aggregates: form, feelings, perceptions, mental volitions, and the consciousness, right? These 5 things are taken together, which we call the aggregate, and we are clinging on to that, right? And after discussing that, the Blessed One is discussing the final thing he wants to talk about so far as the living being is concerned, right? And that final thing is the internal and external objects. We have internal faculties, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, etc. And for those internal faculties, for each of them, there is a specific external object. For the eye, it's only the visual object. For the ear, it's only the sound. Like that, for each of these faculties, there is a specific external object, right? So the Blessed One is talking about that, and that is the section we are discussing now. Even of this section, we have basically understood the basics of it. And before coming on to the topic today, if I remind you what we have discussed in the previous session, the Blessed One says these internal and external objects taken together for any human being, it's the all. If you have anything that your sense faculties can get in touch with, that becomes your universe. No matter how sophisticated the equipment that you are using to amplify it or to see the details of it, but that should get in touch with one of your sense faculties. Then that becomes your world, right? So therefore the Blessed One says, if I name something as the all in this universe, it is your sense faculties and the relevant external object, right? And therefore he says, if we call that there is something born, a birth takes place, the birth takes place of this internal and external sense faculties. And if you therefore have some satisfaction, some gratification, that gratification also arises from that. And you don't have any benefit, any reward without corresponding cost, without a risk, without the danger. So therefore, having gratification from these sense faculties, internal and external, there is a cost to it, right? There is a payment that you will have to make. And because of that, the Blessed One says, it is very important for us to manage it. So to manage these sense faculties, only he has been taking us all the way from the body, from the feeling, through the mind. And then now he's touching the parts of the vehicle that activates everything. It is not the engine, but having the engine is no use unless the vehicle is working, unless the vehicle is having tires. So these are the tires that runs the vehicle, right? So therefore, before disassembling the tires, he is stopping the car. So that is what he does by going through the body, by going through the feeling, by going through the mind, and by going through the nature. And then the vehicle is now stopped. Now he's taking one by one. This is how you see your eye, and this is how you see the external object. So in the last talk, we took the most important faculty, which is the eye, and discussed how significant it is and what a major role it is playing in our existence, and how that faculty dominates the other faculties as well. So therefore, the Blessed One is not taking that faculty straight away to realize ourselves, although it is so significant. But trying to focus on that, trying to understand is so complex, right? Similarly, although we did not discuss the other faculties, ear, nose, tongue, they are also not easy to focus, not easy to understand. They are to a certain extent again complex. So therefore, what the Blessed One does is, he is starting with the simplest question, simplest place, easiest place, which is the body. So that is why we try to bring our attention to the body. So in 4 foundations of mindfulness, Blessed One starts saying, Ujung Kayam Panidaya, which means having the attention to the upright body, right? So when we are walking, we bring our attention to the lower part of the body. And when we are sitting, we try to bring our attention to the upper part of the body, right? So by bringing the attention, then there are a few advantages. When you bring the attention to the body, we can block, close the other faculties. We can close the eye, no work for the nose, no work for the ears, except something that is naturally hearing. And you definitely don't eat, right? So since the other faculties are locked and blocked, right? And you have brought your attention to the easiest faculty or easiest part of the body, then what you can mainly see is not the other complicated faculty. You don't, while sitting, you don't see that eye is active. You don't see that ear is really active. You don't see that nose is really active or the tongue is active. But you can very clearly see your mind is like devil's workshop, right? It never lets you settle down, right? So by bringing the attention to this most easiest physical part of the body, what it directly touches is the mind, right? So that is the topic today. So I'm not, if I talk about the ear, tongue, nose, etc., it will be same as the eye faculty, right? So we don't touch any of those things. We will directly control them by bringing or manage them by bringing the attention to the body, right? So therefore, the next most important thing in the practice is the mind, right? Which we call intellect here. So in the paragraph, what I just read out at the beginning says there is the case where he discerns the intellect, which means the mind in this case, intellect faculty, and he discerns the mental object. So that is the topic, and that is what we are going to discuss today. In doing that, we will have to understand again the significance of it. The significance of intellect faculty is not mentioned in this phrase. It is taken as a separate faculty, true. But in all other 5 faculties, the intellect is mentioned, right? So when the Blessed One was mentioning about the eye, he mentions like this. There is the case where he discerns the eye, he discerns the form, he discerns the fetter. What do you mean by fetter? Fetter has got nothing to do with the eye. Fetter has got nothing to do with the visual object. It is the activation of the intellect faculty. It is the activation of the mental process, right? So therefore, may it be eye, may it be ear, may it be any other physical faculty, once the internal and external objects are connected, after that, physical faculties go away. Physical faculties are not in play. Only the mental faculty is in play. And that is what this fetter means. So therefore, this intellect faculty is one of the most important, most prominent faculty in human existence. But we have never paid any attention to that. We never considered that there is something called mind from the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to bed, from the time we are born to the time we go to the office. We will be looking after our body only. We feed it, we clean it, and we keep it in the most comfortable way, and we decorate it with everything that you can think of. Mind is completely neglected and thrown into a dust pond, which is one of the most important faculties, right? And therefore, it accumulates dust as much as possible. And we don't know what's happening to us. And people call it, and the doctors call it, there is something called stress now, there is something called burning now, there is something called anxiety now, there is something called this now, there is something called that now. It is because we have just focused only on materiality, non-matter, or the mind, completely ignored, right? So the Blessed One has very cleverly used the materiality to bring the mentality to the surface, the intellect to the surface, and is bringing it from the very beginning, right? How he is bringing from the very beginning is through the fetter when the materiality is in. So what is fetter? Fetter means the shackle, the entanglement that arises with the connection or with the linking of the internal faculty and the external faculty. What is this entanglement? When your eyes go to a particular object, right? Now, say, for example, when you are sitting here, the other day also I took the same example, and you are looking at me, there are so many things that you can look at, right? This desk, there, computer, microphone, phone, and book, and all sorts of things. But your attention is to me. So therefore, once your eye gets in touch with that particular visual object, all other visual objects are not in your attention. There is no mind that is created with that. So therefore, the Blessed One says, the mind arises only with that connection of the internal object and the external object. Unless that connection takes place, there is no mind, right? So you don't have a mind so far as this is concerned, unless you haven't seen it, unless your attention goes there, right? So therefore, the fetter starts with the connection, and that connection is called the consciousness, eye consciousness, right? Similarly for the ear, similarly for the nose, similarly for the tongue, similarly for the body and the mind, right? So that creation of that connection is the consciousness, right? So once this consciousness takes place, we call it the eye contact. When the eye contact takes place, then you will have a feeling whether that contact is a good one or a bad one, whether it's an agreeable one or a disagreeable one, whether it's a pleasant one or an unpleasant one. That feeling has got nothing to do with the eye. It has nothing to do with the visual object. Now it is something happening in the mind, giving an interpretation, making a decision whether it's good or bad, right? So once you select whether if it is good, then you want to have more of it. You want to increase it as much as possible. You want to give it to your loved ones as well, right? If it is an unpleasant one, if you don't like it, if you disagree with it, you want to completely eradicate that from the universe, right? Where is this happening? In the mental process, in your intellect process, right? And then you make your plans, you make your projects, you have short-term plan, you have mid-term plan, you have long-term plan to do all these things. And with those mental processes, then it becomes a concept, it becomes an activity, it becomes a project, and then it becomes a reality. And that is how people go to the moon. That is how people go to the Mars. That is how people dig the earth. That is how people find all these things, right? Internal object, external object, connected, and then the fetter keeps starting, it keeps working. And that entire process, the Blessed One simply uses one word: you get entangled, a fetter. You become a victim, you become a prisoner, and you become a slave to that process, right? So therefore, may it be I or any other physical faculty, your intellect is at work, right? And for the intellect to be at work, it is taking the mental qualities. When I say mental quality, it is taking the images of what you have seen. It is taking the images of sound that you have heard. It is taking the images of taste that you have had. It is taking the images of aroma, smell that you have had in the past, or that you would like to have in the future, right? These negatives, these images, these shadows, these facets, shades are in your mind, right? So as soon as a contact comes, these come up and then start working on them. So that way, intellect becomes the most dominant faculty of all the physical faculties as well, right? So by listening to this, if you make a comparison between physical and intellect faculties, physical faculties, both internal and external, are extremely innocent. They have got, they don't have anything to do with our stress, anything to do with our entanglement, right? Say, for example, if person with good eye sees something beautiful, it is not the fault of the eye. Eye sees that because your eye is healthy. And that beautiful thing that he sees, that beautiful thing does not know that eye is seeing it. Right? If a handsome boy or if a boy sees a girl, and he will have some idea about that girl does not know. That visual object is completely innocent. And even the eye does not know that it is it has done anything. Eye is healthy and it just sees. Where is the interpretation going on? It is in our mind. So the culprit is the mind. Therefore, the Blessed One told Uttara, a student of Parasarya Brahmin, we don't try to eradicate the eye, or we don't try to eradicate any of the faculties. We don't try to eradicate all the other external objects in the world. We try to manage our faculties ourselves. Because Parasarya was saying, don't see, don't hear, don't listen to anything, don't have taste. If you do that, you will go to hell. The Blessed One says, then, not that you will go to hell, you will not be enlightened. Then the Blessed One said, then all deaf people should be enlightened, all blind people should be enlightened, all dead people should be enlightened, all small kids should be enlightened, because infants, none of their faculties are really active. Then he was shivering and he was trying to find a place to hide. Blessed One says, no, even I explain, I teach a way to restrain your faculties, but it is not eradication of either the internal faculties or the external faculties, but manage it. And this is what, this is how he is telling us to manage. Be aware that my eye is active. Be aware that I am in touch with an external visual object. Be aware now the theta is taking place, right? That is why we call it observe. In the walking, we are observing to train that skill, to master that skill. So if you are able to observe your leg movements, if you are able to observe your respiration, what you develop, what you improve is your skill of observation. When your skill of observation improves, then these fetters are taking place. That observation faculty will come forward and then will observe that as well. The mind will try to entangle you. But this observation faculty is much superior. Mindfulness faculty is much superior, much stronger. And it will keep observing whatever your mind is doing, whatever your intellect is doing. Right? So therefore, that entanglement will not take place. Right? So that is one comparison. The poison is in the intellect and not in the physical, internal or external faculty. Right? The other comparison that you can say is physical media, which is your physical internal faculty and external faculty, are always only here and now. If I see you, it's happening right now, right here. But for the mind, it has now, it has here. It also has a future. It also has a past. Mind is only storing these things and ferment it as much as possible so that it can make us intoxicated with those things. And I was so and so when I was 18, and we talk about the things that we have been doing when you were 18, 20, 25. And then after 50, then we are talking about the future, which age guy is cheapest. That mind is having all that. Time is something for the mind. Space is something for the mind. But for the physical faculties, it's right here, right now. Because physical faculties are not doing any harm to us. The harm is done by the mental faculty. The Blessed One is so clever, he uses the physical faculty to show this vicious cycle of the mental faculty. As soon as when you, even the first time, when you come and walk here, when you come and sit here, the first question, how did your practice go? No, I was having so much of thoughts. Which means immediately we can see the activation or the agitation or the significance that the mental faculty or the theta, or rather the intellect faculty is playing in our life, in our practice, right? And another comparison that you can see is the physical media or the physical faculty doesn't react. They don't react. The beautiful girl will not say, see me, see me, see me. I will not go and try to see a particular thing. If it gets in touch, it gets in touch. But the direction is given by our intention. Our intention says, ask the eye, don't see that one, but see this one. And get rid of that one and try to keep this one. Or hear this sound and don't hear that sound. Right? So all these directions are coming from the intellect, from our mental faculty. So therefore, the reaction is always coming from the mental side, intellect. And that is the one that's directly touching. He knows the mind is always reacting. Therefore, he says, simply observe. Simply observe. And you know, when we observe, even without our knowledge, we are so obsessed with it, the reactions take place. Even the person talking here, when my legs are paining, even without my knowledge, I just change the posture. That's a reaction, a subtle reaction that our mind is doing. I mean, it is nothing wrong in doing that. But it's very good if we can see this is happening, this is what our mind is doing. Then you are mastering your observation faculty, you are mastering your mindfulness. Right? So the Blessed One is not stopping anything. But he lets you see, gives you an additional amplifying glass so that you will be able to see yourself well. Right? So that's the comparison of intellect faculty and the other physical faculty. When you, since this intellect faculty is so dominant, not only on its own, but it is having dominance over all other faculties. The Dhammapada, the short utterances of the Buddha, the first utterance itself says, mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief. They are all mind-made. So everything, the mind is taking the lead. And there are a few other sentences after that, which I have not taken. If with an impure mind, a person acts or speaks, suffering follows him like the wheel that follows the foot of the ox. Right? So the mind is leading everything. So therefore, you have a choice. You can have either a pure mind or an impure mind. If you have an impure mind, then you are inviting troubles on you, like the wheel that follows the ox. Right? And on the other hand, since the mind is the chief, in the second utterance, the Blessed One says, if with a pure mind the person speaks or acts, happiness follows him like his never departing shadow. And in the case of suffering, it is a bit far away. You will have to have some connection to the wheel. That is your impure mind. But if your happiness is there, that happiness is always with you. Your shadow is not far away from you. It is always connected. Right? So being happy is very easy if you know that you are unhappy. Happiness is nothing but knowing that my mind is impure. And that itself is the purity. But what is taught in our schools, what is taught in our universities, what is taught in our PhDs is to eradicate and remove, to react. Never says, just accept it. If you say accept anything, you can't sell products. This, what do you call, I don't remember that term, cosmetic industry, completely collapsed. If you accept what you are and how you are and how you look like, no cosmetic industry. It not only that, I took that because it is easy to explain. A lot of other industries will go down. And if you just keep observing, so therefore it is something that the world does not want to teach people. But they know that the people are aware of it. People are aware of it and people are trying to be observant. So therefore the trick they are using is they are trying to take the authority of teaching mindfulness. They are taking mindfulness to the universities, and the doctors and lecturers and professors who learn psychology becomes the authority of mindfulness. They don't practice. They know the book. So therefore, once that authority goes, because that is the usual acceptance, usual tendency in the world, or he's having these tags at the end of his name, so I can rely on him. What do you have? You're just a robe and just eating and sitting in the temple. How can you explain this with all these short terms used in science? So therefore, we don't have authority. And that is happening, and that has happened already in the Western world. When I resigned from my job to take a simple life, the day I gave it was so very interesting coincidence. I gave the resignation and came and sat down at the desk. There was an email from one of my friends saying, looking for senior lecturers for mindfulness. And then I was really attracted to it. And then I read it, and they were asking a lot of qualifications, this degree, that degree, and I did not have, so I did not apply, fortunately. So in that manner, they are trying to take the authority of it, and then they will be able to continue selling products, because actual observation will be limited to what they want, right? In the Western world, mindfulness is used just to reduce stress, just to improve the leadership quality, just to improve the kids' observation capacity, just to send soldiers to the war field, and when they come back, you can meditate and all your post-traumatic stress will go. Right? So to achieve those, to optimize sensual pleasure, they want to use mindfulness, which is very pathetic. And the consequence of that will be much worse than nuclear bomb, because it is something that is available for the purification of beings, and we are using it for the byproducts of it. And then we are going to have a disease out of the medication for which there is no medication. So anyway, that's not our area. Therefore, what I want to say is this intellect is so important, and Dhammapada directly in the first two utterances itself mentions how significant it is. Now, where is this intellect, or where is this mind, is a big question. A lot of people are asking, where is this, right? And Buddha has not mentioned anything about it, possibly because he wants to avoid conditioning. If he says that this intellect is in this place, then people will straight away get conditioned, right? Instead, he lets people to see this communication link between the physical process and mental process. And more you purify the two, better you will be able to see how the intellect works. And that is what you see straight away when you come and walk here, when you come and sit here. Right? Purify means you stop your usual reaction. You stop feeding your eyes, ears, nose, etc., and try to observe, right? And then the intellect starts working. So that's the starting point of the purification. And the higher Dhamma, the scholars of Buddhism says it is in the heart and in the blood, right? And there is a Western philosophical view. They say part is in brain and part is in the heart. The things like rationality, knowledge, and inference ability, all that is in the brain. And things like equality, emotion, and aesthetic nature, all that is in the heart, right? And Western scientific view is that intellect is in the brain. And as I said, Buddha has not expressed any view to avoid the condition, right? So therefore, we will have to go with what Buddha has said. We don't know where the intellect is, but you can observe you can develop your observation skill, mindfulness. Then you can see how deep you can be sensitive of your physicality as well as mentality, right? When you are sitting, if you feel that it is difficult to sit, if you have an unpleasant feeling, that is a development of mindfulness. That is because your mind is with the body. That is why you feel it. You have given up satisfying your eye. You have given up satisfying your ear. You have given up satisfying your nose, tongue, etc. It is completely with the body, and therefore you feel pain. Right? So in that manner, there is a communication system in our physical and mental process. Those communication systems, you will be able to get into those communication systems when you start and develop your observation skill, which is mindfulness. So this is how it works. The process of theta, or the process of intellect, is explained in many discourses of the Buddha. The one which we have discussed previously, the discourse called Nala Kalapa, or sheaves of reeds. It's a dialogue between Venerable Mahakotthita and Venerable Sariputta. And I'm not going to take the long part. In one of the questions, Venerable Mahakotthita is asking Venerable Sariputta, is name and form self-made or other-made, or made by both of them, self as well as the other, or whether it is spontaneous? It's a very valid question. Self-made means, name and form means, form means our body, right? Or the basic physical elements of our body. Name means the mental process. It's another, the term that Buddha used to physical process and mental process is name and form. Mental process is name, physical process is form. And Venerable Mahakotthita is asking whether it is self-made, whether I have made it, or whether it is made by somebody else. Majority of the people in the world believe that it is by the God, or by Ishwar, or by the Mahabrahma. Somebody else has made it. He's asking the same question. Or he's asking whether both of them have got together, and I have something to do with it, and he also has got something to do with it, and we made it. Or whether none of us are involved, it is just spontaneous. Then Venerable Sariputta says, no, none of these are correct. Consciousness is the prerequisite condition for the name and form. For the name and form to appear, there should have a cause for it. There is a reason. If that reason is there, name and form will be there. What is the reason? This consciousness. If the consciousness is there, what is the consciousness? Link between the physical faculty, internal faculty, and the external object. When that is linked, consciousness arises. For the ear, for the eye, for the nose, and for all the 6 faculties. That just the link is the consciousness. So if the consciousness is there, name and form starts. Right? And then he's asking, Venerable Mahapotita is asking the same question. Is the consciousness self-made, consciousness other-made, or made by both, or spontaneous? Then Venerable Sariputta says, no, name and form are the prerequisite condition for consciousness. So it's a very, very funny answer. He says the prerequisite condition for name and form is consciousness. Prerequisite condition for consciousness is name and form. So it's a loop. Every time when there is a link, as soon as the consciousness arises, mental process is working so fast, it creates a form, it creates another mental process and goes on. And that again creates another consciousness and another name and form. It keeps on going continuously, right? And it is happening at such a rapid pace, we don't know and we can't see it. But if you become an observer, then you quietly develop that skill. How fast our mind is working, how fast our mind is doing things. You can see that loop. And when you observe, that loop quietly gets, because consciousness, you start seeing, as the Blessed One says here, he discerns this is I. He knows now I is active. He discerns that I is taking the visual object. So it is happening under your surveillance. The security guard is there, policeman is there. So therefore it can't work the way it is used to work. When the security is there, when the army is there, you will have to be careful. So that's the same thing that the mindfulness or the observation does. So we are so much entangled in this loop that we think it's our happy life. And similarly, this process is also explained in another discourse, which is again a very beautiful long discourse, which is called Malumkya Putta Sutta, or discourse about Venerable Malukya Putta. And the Venerable Malukya Putta is an old monk like me, is going and asking the Blessed One, can you give me an object to meditate? The Blessed One blasts him, and you old man comes here and asks objects to meditate. I have given so many objects, you can take one of them and practice. And if the young people come and ask, what can I give them? And all that. He keeps on begging, and finally, Blessed One gives explanation. And he, after that, tells how he, I'm not going to tell everything, how he understood it. And he tells the Blessed One, now, if I am right, if I understood what you said, and this is my understanding, he says, seeing a form, mindfulness lapsed. If you see something with no mindfulness, attending to the theme of endearing, impassioned in mind, one feels and remains fastened there. What it says is, when you see something, if you don't have mindfulness with it, you become a prisoner to it. Theme of endearing, right? You get involved in it and you become impassioned in the mind about it. And one feels, and he starts feeling good or bad, whatever, and he remains fastened there only. You become, you hooked onto it. You have no escape from it. When does it happen? If you don't have mindfulness, mindfulness lacks. And then he is giving the other side of it. He says, not impassioned with forms, seeing a form with mindfulness firm. If you see whatever you are seeing with very clear mindfulness, dispassioned in the mind, instead of enjoying it, he knows that I'm seeing. He knows that my attention is there. One knows and doesn't remain fastened there. You don't get hooked onto it. You see it. Not that you run away. You see it mindfully. Right? You listen to it mindfully. You taste it mindfully. So the Blessed One does not say, don't eat. Right? You eat, you taste it, but you mindfully, so you don't get hooked on it. But if you are not mindful, you say, so nice, so gorgeous, and say, looks tasty. You can't look taste. Smells tasty. Right? And all sorts of words are there in the word to show that we are hooked onto it. Right? And then he further goes and says, and this part is even so inspiring, he says, even while experiencing a feeling, it falls away, doesn't accumulate. So after seeing that, you may feel you have seen something and your mind is not ordained. Mind will give a lot of interpretations. As okay, it is such a good one. Why don't you take it home? You see that as well, right? It says, even while experiencing a feeling, you can see even when the mindfulness is firm, you can see the mind is going for the feeling as well. So if you see that, it falls away and doesn't accumulate. You don't get the theme of endearing will not happen. And so no stress, and said to be in unbinding and no fetter. So if you are mindful, the fetter will not happen. In fact, it looks like the fetter is happening. But because you are mindful, you know that the fetter is happening and therefore it is not actually getting fastened. And there is a nice example for it. What Venerable Katugurunde Jnanananda has given. When you stitch something in the old machines, sewing machines, there is a thread going underneath. And there is another thread with the needle that is sewing, right? So to stitch it together, the needle that is taking the thread in will get hooked with the thread that is going underneath, right? So then it becomes fastened and it sews well. Now here what happens is when you are mindful that the thread going underneath is not there, but you see that the needle from the top is working and it is sewing, but actually it is not stitching there. So something like that is happening when your mindfulness is firm. So this means the fetter arises. Unbinding means the fetter arises. The arising fetter, the abandoning happening there itself because you are mindful. And sees the complete cessation of it since you are mindful. So hope this has given you some idea of how intellect works and what role the intellect is playing in understanding our faculties. So may you all be able to have mindfulness firm to see through the process of fetter and blessings of the Noble Triple Gem. So that is my shouting for the day. So if you have any questions on this or regarding the practice, we can take up. And Chatu is having the mic. Any questions? Don't worry. There is no silly question. Every question is question of humanity.
Actually, this is not a question, and this is a presentation I listened like a couple of days ago. It's about two papers at Einstein in 1935. It's one is quantum physics entanglement, and other one is the general relativity with the black hole with the called wormholes, which is shorter distance. It's exactly this the second one, like entanglement, is exactly that what you said today. Every matter and antimatter creates in this space, and people can't see it, or people can. That happens. That's physically proven, and but at the black hole, the negativity, like a antimatter attracts to the black hole, and then the positive, like protons, comes to the Earth, and that's exactly what Hawking says. That's how we see black holes right now. All the straight creative theories like Big Bang theory now ending up with the circular theories, which is birth and death. Like even universe is now, they said, circular. It's not like a one line. It's curved, and you have forward time and backward time, and comes back, and this happens again. Like with that theory, like what you said with the entanglement, like with the paper or consciousness, that the link, every matter and antimatter has a link. Like it doesn't matter space and time, where it's generated, you have it. And what you said is like actually a lot of in that paper, people think that the negative matter attracts to the black hole. They can't explain it, but what happens? But it's actually in one point. It says actually there's a fundamental another theory: information can't destroy or create, and that information is recorded, and it's actually bypassed and it's recorded somewhere else. And it's exactly like if you like with the string, that theory explains something. It's a bit tricky that point, because it's where the information, like with the brain, what we are getting, consciousness is very difficult to explain. That's, I think I can understand why Lord Buddha said, don't try to like we always like I don't know, as a human being, we need to divide something to understand. Like we can't see light without darkness. Like always we need something, like our sense works like that. And the whole thing is very difficult to understand. And that's why they said we can't understand gravity. We can't understand few things because it's as a whole. And that may be the enlightenment. I mean, that's a different concept, but Western world also moving towards that. And that's Professor Wood done like 80 years of research talking about. I felt like this is what you're talking is really close to what he's saying. Yeah. And that's just a comment, actually.
Now, if I add a few things to that, I also sometimes read this, although I don't understand, being an accountant, physics much. When I read articles on physics, sometimes I laugh. The reason is the practitioners are going through all these things that they are saying without spending a single penny. But they are spending trillions and trillions of dollars to understand such a simple thing. There is just one fundamental issue as far as I can think of. They are trying to understand all these things materially. And all these are gains of the consciousness. You will have to stop analyzing and classifying. You will have to let everything appear. You have to stop your consciousness. Right? You have to go beyond matter. Now, what happens is these people are going to the deepest layers of the matter and get confused. And there is nothing but confusion only will be left once the matter is not there. But 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 6-year-old, if we ask them to observe your breath, and they say, no, my breath is becoming subtler. Can you keep observing when the breath is subtle and you don't feel the breath? They say yes. But these people can't. They say after that it's chaos theory. After that it's quantum theory. It's definitely black. It is definitely hollow after materiality, because your consciousness is completely, or rather not the consciousness, mental process is completely active with defilements. If you stop reaction, just observe both physical and mentality, then you can go through the black hole. And recently, I read an article. They were saying, for us to see black hole, there must have light on the other side. Without you can't see the black. You can't say that there is a black hole. Blessed One said that very clearly in the first discourse itself. Jnanam udapati, panya udapati, vidya udapati, aloka udapati. He has seen vidya, he has seen the science. Once he sees the science, he has seen in and out of all these things with his light, with his wisdom. And it is not just for the Blessed One. And there are a lot of people who says in our other sessions, when they practice, they go into a space which they cannot explain, which their senses are not active anymore. And the fundamental defilements the Blessed One is explaining is greed, hatred, and delusion. And delusion is what we will fall into once we stop greed and hatred. Observation means we neither like nor dislike. Once you gradually come off from liking and disliking, what you simply bring up is the delusion, which we have never seen. That's the black hole. And they are falling into the delusion when they keep on dissecting the matter. They dissected the matter to such an extent. Now the delusion is appearing. They can't explain it because the mental process is working so far. And all these are done by the mental process, so in an entanglement. And there was another article I read. I'm sorry, taking too long. Another article I said, they were saying from that particular experiment, I don't remember what the experiment was. This experiment very clearly proves all the fundamental laws of physics are wrong. That is what the Buddha said, everything is impermanent. And they are saying that after spending so many trillions in Chicago to do so many tunnels and networks and all those things, they come out and say, no, the laws that we teach are wrong. Okay. Any other comments, questions? You want to say something? Yeah, Chatu. Thank you.
Mine is just a really simple one. Were you saying that if you have acceptance, then you have happiness? Yes.
I said that. So do you have a question on it?
I was just wanting to clarify that. So if you are able to accept, then you will just have happiness will come through that, through acceptance.
Yes. How it happens is unhappy means you don't accept something, whether it's good or bad, because you don't like it. If you accept it, you don't try to give any judgment about it. So as soon as you take away the judgment or the decision about it, if you keep the decision pending, suspend the decision, then you don't dig your own grave. Right? So the acceptance makes things short. It doesn't fall into that fetter. So happiness starts following you, and it's sometimes it is hard. Initially, the first time when you accept, you feel, oh, right, it's so easy, and the mind will take that as another hook, gives you overconfidence, and then put you in another pit. So we will have to always be ready. Every time mind may give a difficult situation, but I should be ready to accept. Right? So the basic point is correct. Yes, once you accept, the reaction will not take place and the happiness will follow. You will say something?
Should I come close? Can you hear me? It's about my timetable. So generally my timetable is for a very long time being 1 hour walking, 1 hour sitting in the morning. And then if I have time in the afternoon after work, 1 hour walking, 1 hour sitting or less. And then weekends, maybe 4 to 6 hours, depending on the day. And that's what I've been trying to do as much as possible. The last 6 months, I've been really busy doing lots of things. My average timetable for the morning is 45 minutes walking, 45 minutes sitting, and generally not much practice in the night, or let's say after work, and weekends, if I'm lucky, 2 hours. Should I be doing my original timetable, or is this part of it? Because I can't maintain that timetable, like lengthy hours.
Number one, at the start, it is very important to have a timetable, because this is something which we are not used to. So we'll have to get that into our system. To get that into our system, we need a lot of energy. To generate that energy, we need to have a timetable, right? So it is for the newcomers. So we should have at least maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes. You will have to do it on a daily basis, walking and sitting. And once it falls into the routine, then you can gradually increase. And after it has gradually increased, and when you are having some confidence and control over the practice, it might get affected, right? And when that is affected, and if you can't maintain that, you should not stress over the practice. Practice should not be considered as something that creates stress. And because number one, what we practice is mindfulness, right? So when we practice mindfulness, after getting hang of it, every activity you can do mindfully, right? So therefore, our mindfulness does not mean walking and sitting. If you can be mindful of whatever you do, but that is after having some control over the practice, after having some confidence over the practice. Being mindfulness means accepting whatever is there and being happy with it. But now here, the question is arising from the mind, where the mind is trying to have identification, my mind is trying to identify yourself with the practice now. Right? So therefore, if you don't have the practice, what it is saying is, oh, you're not doing it. That's a trick of the mind. So don't worry. If you have other things, and it is difficult, I mean, it is good to practice. If it is difficult to practice, and if it's a clash, do the other thing mindfully. And as you said, when I was a layperson, I was practicing much more. After coming to the temple, my practice has reduced. And because of other involvement. But still, I'm trying to be mindful as every moment. And happiness has not deteriorated. Sometimes the waves are coming. When the waves are coming, quiet and observe. And the wave goes down. Wave means something that comes up. And when it will not stay up, must go down. So if you observe, you can see the wave is going down. So we don't have that patience to observe it. And that's normal as well. But once you practice, you will be able. So therefore, it's a trick of the mind. And trying to identify yourself with the practice. And the formal practice, although it is important, is not the end. Just see whether you are mindful in whatever you do. Happy or not? Yeah.
So the second part, which is be mindful in day-to-day activities. I would put it like, I remember when I was first doing it, like I'd take a shower and I'd be observant of sensation. Now I just take a shower. I don't specifically look for objects. Up to the sense where I don't specifically do anything, let's say mindfully or object-based. I may or may not be aware of doing it. And probably the only difference between my life now and the life before mindfulness is I know what mindfulness is. But everything else works exactly the same as it was before I became mindful. What do you think? Everything. Yes. So I would say my life is exactly the way it was before I knew mindfulness. I do like all these other activities and things, but the way I do them is exactly the same. The only difference being I know what mindfulness is. I know what mindfulness is. Yes, that's the only difference. Should I disconnect?
How do you say that you know what mindfulness is comparing before and after? So things are happening automatically and you just keep observing. Right, and now? If I ask, if you don't see any difference, how is your happiness level or stress level? Sorry? Yeah, so that's it. And if the things are happening the same and happy with whatever is happening, then it is because of mindfulness, because the reaction is not coming into the play. When the reaction is not there, no matter what happens. So this is why the Blessed One says it's a way of living. So what you do will not change, but your attitude towards it will change. So this is why all these phenomena things, Blessed One is not asking you not to see, not to eat, not to drink, not to taste, not to smell. He says, do all that, but just be aware. So before and after, it's the same person, but with a different perspective. And you will not see a difference as well. When you compare, you don't see a difference as well. It's the same person. Right. Is there any question from, any comment from Zoom? All right. So if there is no comment, question, and the sisters, you all have anything? Right, good. And we can transfer the positive energies, which we call transfer of merit, to all the living beings who are able to receive them.